In this adventure, we explore Eastern Oregon's Alvord Desert. The Alvord Desert is a 12 by 7 mile expanse of lifeless nothingness existing in the rain shadow of the Steens Mountains. Our primary destination for this adventure is the Alvord Hot Spring, which exists on the direct west edge of the desert. However, Louis and I will choose to camp on the direct east edge of the desert, offering ourselves the unique chance and challenge of walking across the entire playa. You join us on arrival as we lay eyes on the desert for the first time. Tent pitched, campsite established. I don't see it at all. I see it. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Wildlife.
If you came out here with like 4 or 5 big tarps.
These could be shelter, yeah.
That turns into a house. Get this whole look at Macy's.
Our cold vacuum technology maintains 99% of the fresh fruits and vegetables' original nutritional value. Along with diet and exercise, Mother Nature provides fruits and vegetables to help us maintain good health.
888-712.
Cheers, matey.
That's 888-712-8723. Right now at the Home Depot,
Or maybe for the camera, I should have gone like...
off appliance special buys. Top load washer and dryer pair.
The Alvord Desert and its surroundings owe much of their striking beauty to two of Oregon's most recognizable large-scale natural processes: the rain shadow effect, and geologic upheaval. First things first then. A rain shadow is a dry area on the leeward or downwind side of a mountain or a range of mountains. Prevailing winds force moist air towards areas of higher elevation where the moisture condenses into rain, ultimately leaving the windward side green and the leeward side dry. Oregon itself is a fine example of rain shadows. The Cascade Range of mountains is responsible for the rainy, fertile Willamette Valley as well as the high and dry deserts of central and eastern Oregon. It is, however, not Oregon's only rain shadow. The Coast Range, lying along the coast, is an extremely rainy place by comparison, meaning that the air which reaches central Oregon has actually been rain shadowed twice, so to speak. The Alvord Desert, however, is an area which has the supreme misfortune of being rain shadowed 3 times. Steens Mountain, one of southeastern Oregon's most impressive geologic features, takes what little moisture is left in the air coming from the west, leaving the Alvord Desert on its immediate leeward side extremely dry. The Alvord receives, based on averages from between 1980 and 2010, an average of 6.54 inches of rain per year. Comparatively, Bend in central Oregon receives 11.21 inches, Salem between the Coast and Cascade ranges receives 39.64 inches, and Newport on the coast itself receives 70.99 inches. That's about 11 times more than the Alvord Desert.
Jeez. It's a whole lot colder than it looks out here.
Okay, I just did all the distance measurements. Walking across the Alvord Desert is probably at least 6 miles from where we're camped to the hot spring. So round total, that would be a 12-mile hike, which does not sound as daunting as it normally would due to the fact that that hike is a straight line over perfectly flat ground. So it's kind of a little more like walking through a shopping mall or something like that. It's like what Louis said yesterday at some point, that if you just like brush away the dust of the ground, it's like a kitchen floor.
Yeah, I had this classic moment at night where I woke up.
We are now departing into the vast expanse of nothing which lies ahead. Yes, a slight moisture difference.
Yeah, we've been
Taking a break. These are the same texture.
a British police whistle.
All right, fam, do it. Good luck, sweet pupper. Kippered herring with Sailor Boy pilot bread.
It's very delicious. Delicious food in the desert. Nom.
Yeah, so it seems like these little flakes are just caused when, like, there's some kind of layer of different material on top of the mud that just dries up so much that it curls up on itself.
Yeah, it's pretty weird. Coming upon an area that looks a lot more moist.
Yeah.
Quite the mirage out there.
The Great Milk Step.
Truly. But why is this bare land through which we walk named the Alvord Desert? Well, to understand that, we need to go back to the time of the American Civil War, back when Oregon wasn't yet a state and the wild territory remained cut off from the turmoil of the country at large. The 1850s and 60s saw an influx of white settlers in Oregon. They came to mine, harvest lumber, hunt furs, or anything else they could do that would turn a profit. In doing so, they encroached on reservation lands belonging to Native American groups along the Snake River. Obviously, tensions mounted and only grew as the years went on. Eventually, this tension would turn to violence. Bands of Snake Indians would harass and attack traveling groups of settlers, and the settlers would retaliate. This process of violence became the Snake War, the most deadly, but also the least remembered, of the Indian wars in the American West. Nearly 1,800 were killed before peace was brought back to the region by the conflict's later leaders. An officer early in the Snake War, Captain George Curry, came upon this playa and decided to name it in honor of his commanding officer at the time, Brigadier General Benjamin Alvord. Alvord had been given command of the District of Oregon as a reward for his gallantry in the Mexican-American War's Battle of Palo Alto. Now, he was concerned with balancing the interests of incoming settlers with the treaties held with Native American groups throughout the territory. As the American Civil War raged in the southeast, Alvord was left with a very small volunteer infantry. Frustrated by this, Alvord became a supporter of the draft, and, in the meantime, paid out private bounties. This is the kind of behavior that would get Alvord removed from command in Oregon at the end of the Civil War. He was sent back to the East Coast, where he served as the Army's paymaster general until he died in 1884, becoming nearly completely forgotten in the ensuing decades. Better remembered than the Snake War and Alvord's military career are his contributions to science and mathematics. While commanding the District of Oregon from Fort Vancouver, Alvord investigated the geometric properties of circles and spheres, publishing 2 papers on the subject. In his later life, Alvord became a repeated publisher in various academic journals and magazines. He wrote on the subject of winter grazing in the Rocky Mountains, and created the first scientific description of the compass plant's ability to orient itself facing northwards. Today, Benjamin Alvord is remembered only by this flat expanse of lifeless nothingness which bears his name, itself some of the only modern reference to the forgotten war which covered this territory. Smothered under the historical legacy of the Civil War, this story remains only for curious travelers passing through. Well,
Yeah, these rocks are all damn boy. Oh, I can't use the handrails. I have a beer and a Snickers. Yeah? Why is my life so difficult? Climb down hard way. Oh, that is so pleasant. So, I mean, really what we've done is, like, you could describe this trip in such a way that it sounds like really easy. And I mean, in some ways it has been. I mean, it's like, drive out to this desert, drive across the world's least challenging terrain, camp in just this beautiful little cove, and then walk across the world's least challenging terrain, and then sit in a hot tub and drink beer. And it's just out here for the taking.
Louis.
A very neat fungus.
How is it?
Pretty hot.
The Alvord Desert and Steens Mountain owe their physical placement and existence, in a certain sense, to the second of the geologic features that I mentioned earlier, that is, tectonic upheaval. Steens Mountain itself was formed from flows of basalt during the late Miocene epoch between 15 and 8 million years ago. But around 7 to 4 million years ago, geologic stress began to occur along north to south fault lines, which caused these basalt flows to expand and contract. Now, some areas which were caught between close fault lines were raised up, and others were lowered down. One of the raised areas would be known as a horst, and a lowered area is known as a graben. The countless ridges and valleys of southeastern Oregon, as well as much of the western United States, exist due to this type of faulting as well as glacial carving. The Alvord Desert, then, is a graben, bordered by high ridges on its east and west sides. Because the Alvord Desert is still bounded on all sides by areas of higher elevation, it has only internal drainage, meaning that water can only escape the desert through evaporation. Runoff from the nearby mountains has turned the Alvord into a real lake at least a few times, as the faint traces of different shorelines show. The Alvord Desert's hot springs exist along the western edge of the desert, where the Steens Mountain Horst meets the Alvord Desert Graben, and geothermally heated areas of water are able to push through the relatively thin and delicate basaltic crust.
Figured out how to dry my underwear.
Oh,
Right?
perfect. That is perfect.
of us. Selfie stick.
Holy shit, we made it. Ugh.
Frauding the public with ridiculous an investigation or when apologize to the American people and join us to rebuild our crumbling institution. Okay, then he goes on to get this is pretty good from that. We haven't done it in a while. Largely been for buying with him. All of this is and then get start and people they don't like. I'm try not President Trump has here he goes after I've ever seen. Not long ball hitter. But today, well, we really know that we're still in a business office. Okay, it's funny. Sorry, that's funny. But it's funny. But again, he's the president. Comedian. Is it smart going back into comedy mode? This is what I understand. A lot of people find it entertaining. It is inherently. This is the thing about Trump that I think the media don't understand. Folks don't understand either. Dude's actually pretty funny. And dude, he plays it in the room as though he's an actual stand-up comedian.
That's cool. That's where the tent was.